Welcome back. So far, we've described HTTP as a stateless communication protocol between a client and a server. In practice, however, due to the layered nature of the internet, our request and response messages will pass through multiple intermediaries before they reach their destination. When they operate at an application layer, these intermediaries are called proxies. In other words, a proxy is just another server that sits between the client making the request and the end server that will provide the response. And this server acts as an intermediary, typically doing something very specific, functional oriented thing. Okay? For example, in a corporate setting, a proxy server is used to control access to the internet. You're browsing the web at work and you work for a large corporation, chances are your web activity is going through a proxy server that may be monitoring or filtering your requests. Another example is a caching proxy, which is a server that stores a copy of the response message locally. So if we make a request to a server, the cache proxy will first see if it has a copy of the response message. If it does, it will send that back to us. If it doesn't, it will actually make the request or forward the request to the server to sync up and store that copy locally so that the next time we make the request, the proxy will see that it has the copy and send and serve that back to us, which will be much faster and will not involve the server at all. A third example is a load balancer, right? So load balancing proxy, which is just a server that distributes the load of incoming requests across multiple servers. So if hundreds of thousands or millions of requests are hitting the server, picture, many different clients interacting with the server at once, the load balancing proxy will take care to distribute those requests across multiple machines so that each server does not get overloaded. Okay? These are just a few examples of the many types of proxies that exist. But the point is that in the real world, our request and response messages will pass through multiple intermediaries before they reach their destination server. And so it's important to understand that while HTTP is just a communication protocol between a client and a server, in practice, between the client and the server, there are many other machines. In web scraping specifically, proxies are also of special importance when we want to obfuscate our identity. For example, if we're scraping lots of information from a given website, we would want to make sure that we cycle through different IP addresses so that we don't get recognized and blocked by the server. And the use of proxy servers is a very convenient way to do that, right? There are companies that provide proxy services, which essentially just means that they provide you with a pool of IP addresses that we can use to make requests, right? So the idea here is that we make the request from our scraping client, right? So we might need to make many such requests to hit different product pages, for example. But if we go straight to the target server, it's really easy to get caught or be identified as a bot because what real user actually asks for 10,000 requests in a matter of seconds, right? So that is not human-like. Now, yeah, there are ways to slow that down so it appears to be more of a natural user. But at the end of the day, you have a single IP address sending 10,000 requests or hundreds of thousands of requests. So what residential proxies do, and these proxy servers, these scraping-oriented services more generally, what they do is they transform this request, which originates from a single IP, they transform it, they make it seem as if it came from another different IP. So our scraping client originates 10,000 requests, but the server sees one request from 10,000 different IPs. And therefore, this makes it more difficult for the server to identify our scraping client and actually block us. To be honest, we won't go into much detail into this, but I wanted to describe what these are and services that help us, use and practically put proxies to great actual effect. We will see later on how to use proxies, how to set proxies in web requests. At this point, I think it's important to understand that when we send a request, we expect a response back. It's usually the case that a lot of other intermediary machines are involved. It's not always truly a communication between the client and the server.